Hey kids, I think we can all agree that there are few pastimes more grotesque than competitive eating. The concept of a bunch of guys pushing their anatomy to its limits just for sport leaves a bad taste in my mouth in more ways than one. But imagine if these men didn't adopt this habit just for fun. Imagine if some gross biological error forced them to eat like this for their entire life. Introducing Tarrare. Tarrare was born in France around 1772 to a poor farming family. It's said that his appetite was so voracious that, by his teens, Tarrare could eat an entire quarter of a cow carcass in a single day. You'd think he'd be like mega obese, but no, he only weighed 100 pounds by age 17. However, there were still a few things that stood out about Tarrare appearance-wise. For one, he had a huge, stretched-out mouth with horribly stained teeth. He could reportedly fit 12 eggs in his cheeks at once, much like a chipmunk keeping its chipmunk eggs warm. Additionally, when Tarrare was full, he'd get a crazy Octomom gut going, and any other time, he'd have a huge flap of stretched out skin hanging around his waist. He also stank to high hell, even by 18th century French peasant standards. He was described as reeking, quote, to such a degree that he could not be endured within the distance of 20 paces. So between all this and his horrendous outhouse flooding dumps, his family had had enough. Alright, you're eating us out of house and home here. You gotta go, man. You heard me. Kick bricks, Froggy. Wow, he just called a French person a frog. That's so racist. No, it's not. They're all French. The guy just looks like a frog is all. Oh. Well, too late. I'm already offended. That's fair. Dislike. After leaving home, Tarrare was forced to beg and steal just to satisfy his gargantuan appetite. Inevitably, people began to take notice of him, and eventually he landed a job as a street performer in Paris. People would hand Tarrare entire baskets of apples, eggs, and even wine corks, and watch in delight as he horked them down without the slightest hesitation. Normally, this went off without a hitch, except for one time when he suffered a severe intestinal blockage. Fortunately, the crowd was kind enough to carry him to the hospital, where he was treated with the strongest laxatives the 18th century had to offer. I would draw what happened next, but it would probably get my channel deleted, so let's just picture it for a few moments. Moving on. Cut to the year 1792. This marks the beginning of the War of the First Coalition. Ever heard of it? Me neither. Who was in it? Fucking everyone. Anyway, Tarrare decided to enlist in the war. After all, maybe that profound emptiness he was feeling was just a lack of purpose in life. Turns out, no, he really was just psychotically hungry. Even after being granted quadruple rations, Tarrare would still be digging through the trash pile whenever he got the chance. After suffering extreme exhaustion, he was sent off to the military hospital in Tarrare. The staff there was so dumbfounded by the man's abilities that they decided to keep him there to run a few experiments. The first of which involved putting Tarrare in a room with a meal prepared for 15 people. Naturally, he ate the entire thing and immediately fell asleep. Next, they presented him with a raw eel. In response, Tarrare crushed the eel's skull between his teeth before slurping down the entire creature in one go. Now, this is hair-clenchingly horrifying for a couple of reasons. Firstly, he put a whole frickin' eel in his stomach, but secondly, there had to be some point during digestion where the meat was gone but the bones still remained. Now, for those of you who don't know, an eel skeleton looks like this. That means Tarrare had all of those needle-sized ribs stabbing into the walls of his stomach at once, and he was fine. He also ripped a live cat apart with his bare hands, drank its blood, and ate everything but its bones, and then later gagged up the fur and skin like an owl, but, you know, that's neither here nor there. After reviewing our data, I've come to the scientific conclusion that, yeah, we got a goddamn demon on our hands. But as we all know, with great devour comes great responsibility. Since Tarrare was still technically enlisted, the military decided to utilize his abilities for the greater good. Hey Tarrare, it's me, the General. Listen, could you eat this box with a note in it for me? If you do it, we'll give you a wheelbarrow full of bull organs. Lo and behold, 2 days later, he passed the container in mint condition and was given his reward as promised. With this proof of concept, they made him an official spy and sent him into Prussia with a document in his belly, to be delivered to an imprisoned French colonel. Unfortunately, there are a couple things Tarrare couldn't do that are generally important when sneaking into another country. A, he couldn't speak German, and B, it's pretty hard to maintain a low profile when you're running around like a madman wolfing down garbage and mutilating small animals. So he ended up being captured by the enemy. Initially, Thankfully, he kept his mouth shut, for once. But after a whipping and a day in jail, Tarrare gave in. After confessing that he did, in fact, have vital intelligence snaking its way through his GI tract, the Prussians chained him to a latrine until the box emerged 30 hours later. The note wasn't actually anything important, so they just mock executed him, gave him a severe beating, and sent him on his way. After all that, Tarrare returned to life at the hospital, desperate for a cure for his condition, but nothing they ever tried worked. Meanwhile, the man's endless hunger continued to get him into all sorts of trouble. He'd often sneak out of the hospital to eat the scraps behind the local butcher and fight stray dogs in the alley for their precious garbage. He'd also seek out patients undergoing bloodletting in order to take all their life juice for himself. On several occasions, he was even caught attempting to eat bodies in the mortuary. By this point in my research, I was so desensitized to this guy that I didn't even bat an eye when I first read that. I was just like, alright. Guess he must have been hungry. Anyway, the hospital staff begrudgingly tolerated Tarrare's buffoonery, until one day when he went too far. Well, Tarrare, you've only had 3 mess hall raids, 4 miscellaneous trash-related mishaps, and 1 cadaver defiling, so I'd say, so far, this week's been pretty good. Doctor, we should probably inform you that a 14-month-old child has gone missing from their room. Tarrare, look at me. Did you eat a fucking baby? Tarrare was promptly kicked out of the hospital and spent 4 years out and about doing, whatever horrific shit you can imagine. When he came back, he was suffering from advanced tuberculosis and died shortly after arrival. During his autopsy, the surgeons found that, when they looked into his mouth, they could see all the way down his throat and into his stomach cavity. As you can imagine, his whole abdominal region was profoundly deformed. Basically, if this is a normal human, this is what they found inside Tarrare. Just like the man's mind, we can see that around 90% is devoted towards food and 10% towards everything else. So, moral of the story here is that, no, you know what, not even I can find anything resembling a moral here. Not all stories have a point to them. Sometimes they're just sad and disgusting from beginning to end. And now a word from our sponsor. As you can probably tell, I'm a very visual person when it comes to learning. I firmly believe that engaging visuals are an essential teaching tool that allows for much deeper comprehension than plain old walls of text. That's why I'm pleased to introduce our sponsor, Brilliant.org. We all know that math and science are really important to master, and Brilliant's elegant UI and step-by-step design makes learning seemingly complex topics very intuitive, especially for visual learners. Their straightforward graphics, delightful animations, and interactive puzzles make it easy and fun to hone your own critical thinking skills. Personally, I've always been super intrigued by neural networks and all the things you can do with them, but I've always been too intimidated to research them in depth. After learning about Brilliant, I actually started taking their course in the subject, and I gotta say, it's been such a pleasurable experience that I plan to continue with it in my own spare time. To support me and learn more about Brilliant, go to brilliant.org/salmonella and sign up for free. Also, the first 200 people that go to that link will get 20% off the annual premium subscription. Till next time, I'm Salmonella, and thank you for watching.
Texture to your shoes than any meat you've ever eaten. In those days, you couldn't just snap into a Slim Jim. That's a modern luxury that we take for granted. Back then, the slogan was, gnaw on a Slim Jim for minutes on end, grinding it between your molars while the gallons of salt turn your mouth into a desert until the mangled hunk of flesh in your mouth is just soft enough to be shoved down your greasy fucking pirate throat without tearing a hole. Another essential food item was known as hardtack. This was essentially just flour and water baked into a cracker-like brick. Beyond the fact that it was totally flavorless, hardtack was also extremely dense, to the point where pirates would often have to slam their fists down on it in order to break it into pieces small enough to fit in their mouth. As long as it was kept dry, hardtack almost never spoiled, although it often became infested with weevils. Excuse me, sir? I'm a vegan, so can I have a new piece? One without any of Mother Nature's beautiful creatures in it? Thanks. Wait a minute, is this gluten-free? This better be hemp rope! Nah, but the weevils didn't make you sick or change the taste all that much, so, and this is true, the crew would just eat it in the dark, so that way they couldn't tell if they were eating a normal chunk or a weevily one. Then there's the crowding. So pirate ships typically packed in as many crew members as possible, because more pirates means more manpower when you go to board an enemy ship. Of course, the downside to that is that you're basically like a bunch of hairy, unwashed sardines. Let me illustrate what a typical night below deck was like. So you're sprawled out on the damp, musty wood floor. Everything's pitch black, you can't see a thing. The smell of the filth and the mold forces you to only breathe through your mouth. Suddenly, your left hand feels wet. Probably just seawater leaking through the hull. You sniff your hand, nope, No, that's piss. You feel something furry rub up against your elbow. It was either the body of a diseased rat or the beard of your diseased crewmate. Either way, that's probably where the piss came from. Some guy's moaning loudly in the next room. Hopefully he's just jerking off, because if he's dying, that's one more body to deal with in the morning. Rinse and repeat for 8 hours, and then it's daytime. The poor diet and cramped conditions led to disease being a huge problem aboard pirate ships. The most well-known of these diseases is scurvy, where you don't get enough vitamin C. When scurvy first begins, you just kind of feel tired all the time, no big deal. Then you get weird spots on your skin and your gums start bleeding. This progresses until all your teeth fall out and all of your body's mucous membranes start gushing blood and pus, causing you to die. So that's a lot of fun. There were tons of other diseases too, I won't go through them all, but here's a few honorable mentions. Also, some people say that alcoholism is a disease. I might just be disturbed, but that's one sickness I could definitely get down with. If it is a disease, then yeah, just about every pirate had this one. If anything though, I'd call that one of the few upsides of pirate life. Finally, there's the combat. So you've gone through all these disgusting, horrible living conditions, but at least you can enjoy the thrill of battle, right? Swinging from rope to rope, sword in your mouth, long, intense saber duels, that kind of thing. But that's typically not how it went down. For one thing, when pirates boarded a ship, 9 times out of 10, they'd just surrender immediately. Because what are a bunch of well-groomed merchants gonna do against a horde of disgusting barbarians? If the defending ship did decide to fight back though, the resulting brawl wouldn't be anything like the movies. It'd be way worse, like immediate R rating. Because pirates rely a lot on brutality, both because they don't have much real training, and because it scares the shit out of people. If you were a deckhand on an invaded ship and you were stupid enough to fight back, you wouldn't be dancing around doing flips and shit, none of that. Instead, they'd probably shoot you in the stomach with a flintlock pistol, kick you to the ground, chop off your shoulder blade with a hand axe, gouge out your eyes with a marlin spike, wind your intestines around the prow, and then toss your twitching body overboard. And that's only a slight exaggeration. Honestly, if Jack Sparrow got attacked by actual pirates, he wouldn't last a second. It's kinda like a used car salesman going to prison, like, I'll be fine. If anybody tries intimidating me, I can get out of it with my quick wit and charming personality. Boy, you look real pretty from behind. Oh wow, I'm boned. So yeah, in short, if you were thinking about pulling a Captain Phillips anytime soon, I'd advise against it. That's all for today. Till next time, I'm Salmonella, and thank you for watching. This episode of Salmonella Academy is brought to you by Skillshare. Hey kid. Yeah, you. I just got off the phone with the big man upstairs. And he told me that I need to clear a few things up around here. So without further ado, here's 10 pieces of malarkey that you might still be spreading. Number 1. Nobody was ever burned to death at the Salem witch trials. Of the accused, 15 died in prison, 19 were hanged, and 1 was squished to death. That last one is way more interesting than any cremation, by the way. Dude was a badass. His name was Giles Corey. He was 81 years old and so done with the town of Salem's garbage that he wouldn't even dignify the trial with a plea. So the town stuck him between 2 boards and stacked rocks on top of him in an effort to draw out a confession. But every time they tried to get something out of him, all he would say was, "More weight." This went on for 3 solid days until he finally died, never giving any indication as to whether or not he was a witch. One can only wonder. Number 2, the OG Buddha wasn't the obese guy. That's Budai, a Chinese folk character meant to represent Maitreya, aka future Buddha. Now this shirt is double sad. Number 3, Buddha wasn't a god either. He was just a guy named Gautama. Now this shirt is triple sad. Number 4. Ever heard of a vomitorium? Turns out, no. It's not a place where Roman nobles would go to make room for more pheasant spleen and lobster eyelids. It's just a big entranceway to the coliseums that hordes of peasants would spew out of. Number 5. Washington never cut down a cherry tree in his youth. I don't get this one at all. Apparently it's supposed to paint the man in a good light somehow. It's like, Tyler, what the hell happened while we were gone? Where's the tree in the front yard? Oh yeah, that was me. Got bored. Just felt like vandalizing something, you know? Hey, what about my honest character? Number 6, the pyramids weren't actually built by slaves. These workers were respected members of society. They ate meat and worked in 3-month shifts, and even got to be buried right next to the tomb after their death. Matter of fact, that's more than we can say for the people working on man's greatest achievements today. If I spent years of my life helping to build the space station, you're damn right I'd want the Salmonella Memorial Corpse Receptacle floating along right next to it. That would be amazing. Number 7, the Great Wall of China is not the only man-made object visible from space. I don't know
where you dipshits got this one from. First of all, there's no way you could see it with the unaided eye. The wall is like 30 meters thick at most, while the distance to outer space is generally recognized to be 100 kilometers up, known as the Kármán line. To give some perspective, that's like me holding up a standard-sized guitar pick from across the entire length of a football field and asking you what color it is. Also, there are plenty of man-made objects that are way bigger in terms of local surface area than the Great Wall, so even if it was visible, there's no way it would be the only one. Number 8, you might have heard this one before. You know, Hitler was a jerk and all, but hey, he made the Autobahn, so at least he was efficient. Actually, Hitler didn't create the Autobahn. It was already there. He just helped expand it into newer territory. In a similar vein, Mussolini didn't make the trains run on time, with most of Italy's infrastructure repairs happening before his rise to power in 1922, and even then they weren't nearly as punctual as he'd like you to believe. So unfortunately, you're gonna have to find something else to like about these fascists, like Hitler's elegant way of speaking, or the way Mussolini says spaghetti. Number 9, Iron Maidens weren't actual torture devices used in medieval times. Basically what happened is, some archaeologists in the 1800s saw an old metal coffin and some spikes, and said, yo, wouldn't it be wildin' if we put these things up in here, so that way if someone goes in it, they get poked in their bits? You are a sick man, Cornelius. I like it. Into the museum it goes. At least Iron Maiden was real. They were as real as it gets. Still are. And don't you forget it. Number 10, Einstein never failed math. He had mastered both integral and differential calculus by the age of 15. 99% chance this one was just made up to make glue eaters feel better about themselves. Well, congratulations, Dimitri. Looks like you failed pre-algebra for the 3rd time. Brady still can't graduate. Well, hey, that means I'm still on par with famous smart science man, so yeah, worship me. So it just goes to show that we've all got a lot to learn about the world around us. That's why you need to go to Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with over 20,000 classes in technology, design, business, and more. Premium membership gives you unlimited access to high-quality classes on must-know topics so you can improve your skills, unlock new opportunities, and do the work you love. They've got great courses in graphic design and animation, which I've clearly already mastered. I mean, check this out. But I'm sure you could get a lot of use out of them. You can also learn plenty of more recreational skills, like how to solve a Rubik's Cube, or how to play chess really well. Join the millions of students already learning on Skillshare today, with a special offer just for my viewers, where you can get 2 months of Skillshare completely free. To sign up, go to skl.sh/samo. Again, go to skl.sh/samo. to get 2 months of unlimited access to over 20,000 classes for free. Act now for this special offer and start learning today. Anyway, till next time, I'm Salmonella, and thank you for watching.
Hey kids, today I'm going to talk about South Sudan. It's the newest country in the world, becoming fully independent just in 2011, so I'm going to explain why the state came into being and what it's like there today. So to understand why South Sudan exists, you kind of have to know a bit about Sudan as a whole. So before 1956, Sudan was under the joint control of Egypt and Britain. At the end of 1955, they gave a declaration of independence and became their own thing. The independence movement, however, was led by this guy, Ismail al-Azhari, and he was like, hey everybody, we are an Arab-oriented Muslim nation. But then like 8 million Sudanese black people were like, whoa now, hold your camels, Ishmael. Us Africans, we ain't all about your Allah. He was like, yeah, well who cares? Oh, I see. So they got into a civil war between the primarily Arab-Muslim North and the traditionally oriented African South. That went on for 16 years until finally the North's like, alright fine, you can do your thing. Like, you're still part of Sudan, but you can govern yourself for the most part. We'll take our falafels elsewhere. And that peace treaty lasted 11 years, from 1972 to 1983. Eventually, the South was like, well things aren't that bad now, but the Arabs still technically control us, so it could get worse. And I'm not in the mood for any Sharia law anytime soon, so we should probably go back to fighting. So then there was another civil war, which was basically a continuation of the first one, and that ran on from 1983 all the way to 2005, when finally the two sides made a comprehensive peace agreement, which led to South Sudan becoming totally self-governing in 2006. Then after 5 more years of fiddling around with paperwork, South Sudan became a fully fledged independent nation in 2011. So notice how there were 2 civil wars before the South gained independence. I guess you could say, 2 coups make a Sudan. So, now that they finally got what they want, it must be great to live in South Sudan now, right? No, not really. It's actually just about the worst place you could ever choose to live in. Seriously, if somebody gave me the choice of moving to South Sudan or living the rest of my life with my dick inside an anthill, I'd be slathering on the honey before they even finish their sentence. Let me talk about a few reasons South Sudan sucks so bad. First, let me talk about ethnic groups. Europe, as we all know, contains a lot of ethnic groups. Scots, Serbs, Slovaks, Slovenes, Spaniards, Swedes. And those are just the big ones that start with S. There's like 100 others. The same is true with Africa. There are thousands of localized ethnic groups sprinkled all over the continent, whether or not you could tell from first glance. As such, South Sudan is home to a bunch of different peoples, each with their own languages and customs. And these groups have a long history of disagreeing with each other, like they don't get along much. So that's one thing. Second, remember how South Sudan was at war with the North for basically all of the past half a century? Well, as a result, the whole place is pretty geared for war and not much else. Their infrastructure is abysmal and they've got all these guns just lying around waiting to be shot at something. Third, South Sudan has a bunch of oil reserves in different locations around the nation. And we all know how much people like oil. Everybody wants control of whatever wells they can get. So between these three things, the whole place is basically one big whirlpool of chaos. At any given time, the South Sudan government is at war with at least 7 different armed groups from around the country, each of which is also at war with the other groups. And if that's not enough of a shitstorm, the government ended up basically splitting in two in 2013. This is what happened. So you've got the president, his name is Salva Kiir, and yes, he does actually wear a hat like this. It was a gift from George Bush, true story. And then the vice president, his name is Riek Machar. I'm probably saying those wrong, but it's fine. They don't have internet in South Sudan, so nobody can call me out here. So anyway, Salva Kiir, he's very aware of the fact that the country's in a very precarious spot at the moment. So he starts taking greater control of the government and the military, dismissing old people and installing those that he sees fit. And so Riek Machar, he's like, well, gee whiz, Salva Kiir, for someone who calls himself a president, that's pretty dictatory of you. Well, for someone who calls himself the vice president, that's pretty annoying assholey of you. Sir, all I'm saying is, I'm getting pretty sick of you and that gay hat of yours. I'm not wearing a hat. As president of South Sudan, I order you to put on a hat. Yeah, see? That hat's gay. You're wearing the exact same hat. Alright, fuck you, you're out of a job. Wait, what? Yep, you and your whole cabinet, get out. Okay, I made up the part about the hat, but the rest of that is true. Also, I should mention that Kiir and Machar come from 2 different ethnic groups. See, Kiir is a Dinka, whereas Machar is a Nuer, which only heightened the tensions between the two. So after Machar got the boot, he ended up taking a chunk of the military with him, most of which were Nuers like him, and they started a rebellion against Kiir's government. This is known as the South Sudan Civil War, and it's still going on to this day. So yeah, to sum it up, if you looked up clusterfuck in the dictionary, well, you wouldn't find anything because clusterfuck isn't a real word. But if it was, there would probably be a picture of South Sudan next to it. Seriously, this place makes Hotel Rwanda look like Hotel California. And throughout it all, there's still a bunch of hardworking individuals just trying to make a living, farming or herding or whatever. But the constant warfare makes it so the average person has to live in virtually Stone Age conditions. Which sucks, but, what can you do? So that's the story of the world's newest nation, kids. Till next time, I'm Salmonella, and thank you for watching.
Hey kids, I was inspired to make this video while doing research on the ancient medicine man Galen. Apparently, he would often do experiments on animals in order to learn more about the body, his favorite of which was the Barbary ape, due to its anatomical similarity to humans. Now when I say experiments, I don't mean push a button, get a peanut type things. I'm talking like Josef Mengele meets the plague dogs. He'd clamp their pee tubes shut just to watch their kidneys swell, cut their spinal cords in different places to see what went limp and what didn't, and squeeze their brains and make them go unconscious, to name a few. My initial reaction was, hey, that's neat, but then after some thought I was like, whoa, hold the phone. In 200 AD, you couldn't get a doorknob even. Yet, if you had the right resources, you could order a goddamn monkey. Many monkeys, in fact. By the barrelful, presumably. Alternatively, if you were born in the right place, you could be the monkey poacher, making a living wrestling up some primates with nothing more than a net, a pokey thing, a hole in the ground, and a whole lot of ambition. So I got to thinking, what other kind of animals did ancient Rome have access to? Apparently basically everything that lived in this part of the map. They were particularly fond of elephants, and it's easy to see why. Sure, elephants aren't that big of a deal to the average person today, right? You've been seeing pictures of them since you were 2, big whoop. But imagine if you were a 20-year-old man who had never seen an elephant in your life. The closest thing you've ever witnessed is like horses, maybe some deer now and then. You get drafted, you go out to battle, you're a little scared, but you've been trained well, you're ready. Then, over the horizon, you see 20 house-sized behemoths with giant tentacles sticking out of their faces, horns longer than your body sticking out of their mouths, all screaming their weird trumpety scream, making your whole body vibrate like Mars himself is shitting on your very existence. So naturally, Rome loved to show these things off all the time, just as a display of power. Like, imagine if you were going to a speech in DC, and Trump rolls up with a pack of dragons. You'd listen to every word he said. He's got fucking dragons. That's what it was like seeing the emperor parade around with elephants back in the day. Of course, that wasn't the only use they had for imported animals. When they weren't being shown off in menageries, many of the exotic beasts brought to Rome were used in shows called venatios, which were basically like modern-day bullfights, only instead of bulls, you had whatever crazy critters the state could find. Lions, crocodiles, gazelles, whatever. Around 55 BC, Roman statesman Pompey the Great decided to organize one such event, the feature creature of which was, you guessed it, an elephant. Unfortunately, Pompey forgot a crucial Barnum and Bailey trade secret. See, you're supposed to break the elephant's spirit before the show, not during. So the boys get to poking and the thing starts freaking out, just screaming and crying, even gesturing towards the audience like it was begging for mercy. Now the crowd at this kind of event was mainly composed of dirty, bloodthirsty peasants, and even they were like, holy shit, this is messed up. I came here for a nice family-friendly disemboweling or two, but this, just deplorable. Then they all start crying and the whole thing just ends up being a huge mess. Anyway, these types of spectacles became larger and larger as time went on. It's said that Emperor Trajan once held a venatio lasting 120 days, during which some 11,000 animals were killed. They also got pretty elaborate. A lot of creativity went into keeping things fresh for the crowd. In 203 AD, they had a model of a crashed ship built inside the arena, and an assortment of 400 animals were set loose from the wreckage and then killed. That's what we should do for the next Super Bowl halftime show, honestly. Just pack every team's mascot into a decommissioned submarine. Then, when they all run out, we have the troops gun them down while the national anthem plays in the background. Anyway, the ingenuity of the people organizing these events really knew no bounds. One time they tied together a bear and a bull just to see what they'd do. Unfortunately, all that happened was the stock market crash. Also, fun fact, one Emperor Commodus is credited with the invention of a unique crescent-shaped arrow designed specifically to decapitate ostriches and watch them run around headless for a while. Seriously, they did that so often that they needed a device to make the job easier. Sometimes, just to shake things up, they'd have the animals kill the people, which was known as damnatio ad bestias. This form of execution was typically carried out using lions, but other beasts were used as well, including dogs, bears, and at one point even an eagle, although the guy was crucified first, so it wasn't much of a fight. So, moral of the story, if you ever end up in ancient Rome and you want to see some animals, you'll still have access to almost all the same creatures we see in zoos today, and the only catch is that something has to die at the end. Till next time, I'm Salmonella, and thank you for watching. Hey kids, today I'm going to talk about some of the strangest rules, regulations, and ordinances from around the globe. Our first one comes from the United Kingdom. In 1986, Parliament passed what is known as the Salmon Act, which, among other things, made it illegal to handle salmon in suspicious circumstance, whatever that means. Oh shit. Police! Is that fucking fish Jenga? No! Here's another. In many Caribbean countries, it's illegal for a civilian to wear camouflage clothing in public. In other words, you're only allowed to wear really good camouflage. The USA has its fair share of dumb laws, most of which exist on the state level. For example, in Oklahoma, you can be arrested for making an ugly face at a dog. Knowing the average panhandler, it's fortunate that this law doesn't get enforced much, or else half the state would have to brown bag it just by default. And we can check this off. Looking good. Moving on, in the state of Florida, and I don't really know why they'd have to enforce this one, it's considered unlawful to have sex with a porcupine. Police! Hey, guys, it's cool. I'm actually a hedgehog. Oh. Carry on. Another good Florida law, this one really cakes the cake. It's illegal for an unmarried female to go skydiving on Sunday. This is how I imagine that law coming into being, right? We need to ban skydiving. Why is that? The sky is God's domain. Us mortals have no right playing in it. I'm pretty sure God doesn't care about people jumping out of planes for fun. Okay, but how about we just ban people God doesn't like from skydiving, like unwed women? That is the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard. What if it's also the Lord's Day? Okay, that's fair. This next one comes from Russia, where homophobia is fairly commonplace. As one can imagine, gay marriage is a big no-no over there. But in 2013, Vladimir Putin took things a step further, and made it illegal to even tell children that gay people exist. Bolshevik привет, бабушка. Balaklava Soviet Cossack, Kremlin Boyar, Gulag Rasputin, Rubel Anastasia, Tetris Borscht, Red October. Dostoevsky. Stalingrad Kalishnikov Vodka Adidas Track Pant. Suka blyat. Apparently though, that's not the weirdest rule to come out of a former red state. In China, it's actually illegal to reincarnate without the government's permission. Like a lot of Chinese policies, this law was mostly just put in place to piss off Tibet. Still though, I can see there being a lot of unforeseen consequences here. Come in. Sir, we found this cat in one of the local temples. We suspect it might have been a Buddhist in a past life. Huh. Better execute it just to be safe. By your orders, Captain. Meow. Wait a minute, did you hear that? Meow. There it is again. He said Mao. Oh my god. That must be Chairman Mao reincarnated. Sorry, sir, but the orders have already been given. No! Jesus Christ, you just killed our glorious leader. Oh god, you're right. What have I done? Come in. Sir, we found another cat. Meow. Holy shit, that was fast. Anyway, that's all for today. Till next time, I'm Salmonella, and thank you for watching. Also, I have a Twitter now. Check the description.
Hey kids, you've probably seen this scene in TV or movies at some point. A couple of people end up stranded on a desert island, totally isolated from all civilization. It seems like there's no hope for survival, but then one of them looks 3 feet to the left and, oh my god, it's a tree full of fully grown, plump, delicious, smiling, golden-skinned bananas. Amazing. We're saved for the time being. Hey, don't eat those. They're made of lies. See? Listen, why do fruit exist? For a delicious, nutritious snack for humans and animals alike to enjoy? You know, you didn't have to go throwing him into the sun like that.
You're next, Susan!
How did you know my name? I created you. Anyway, as most of you probably know, fruit are a thing because nature figured out, hey, if you put a little bit of deliciousness around your seed, it'll convince some idiot bird or something to carry your baby off to faraway lands, right? But then humans showed up and were like, hey, that's pretty nifty. Listen, is it cool if we selectively breed you for thousands of years to give you horrific deformities to crank up that whole deliciousness part a couple hundred notches? Alright, cool. Let's take a look at bananas, specifically the Cavendish variety that we all know and love. On the inside, we got like 2% seeds, 93% delectable banana meat, and 5% that brown part at the bottom that your mom says is perfectly fine to eat but you still don't trust. Great for a snack, terrible for reproducing efficiently. Meanwhile, check out the thing on the right here. That's Musa acuminata, one of the suspected ancestors of today's nanners. Much smaller and jam-packed with seeds, with just enough flesh in there to make it worth some smelly primate's time to crack open a yellow one with the boys. Here's another wild type banana, Musa balbesiana. Less sweet, way starchier, harder to get into, hella seeds, same shit different day really. But hey, if you stick that boy in the ground, you've got an okay chance of making a new banana tree. You bury a modern banana, all you're gonna end up with is a dirty banana. And not that one club in Miami, I mean an actual dirty banana. That's because, like a lot of cultivated fruit, culinary bananas are so inbred and malformed that they can't produce offspring even if they wanted to. So, word of advice for you men out there, if ever a lady points out how poorly endowed you are, just show her this JPEG. She'll say, wow, I didn't realize it was so potent and fertile. You really opened my eyes, thank you. Bananas aren't the only piece of produce to follow this pattern though, not by a long shot. For example, take the watermelon. According to Monsanto, everybody's favorite corporation, the first evidence of human cultivation of the watermelon dates back to Egypt around 5,000 years ago. Back then, they were only 2 inches in diameter, around the size of a tennis ball. The flesh was supposedly tough and bitter, much like that of a tennis ball. Of course, just as the growth of a delicious green baby takes time, so too did the evolution of the modern watermelon. In fact, even as late as the mid-1600s, watermelons looked way different from what we have today, as shown by this painting by Giovanni Stanchi. Notice the thicker rind, the larger seeds, and the weird segmentation on the inside. Definitely a cooler still life subject, but ultimately inferior as a summertime snack. How about vegetables? Tell me, do you enjoy cabbage, Brussels sprouts, kale, collard greens, broccoli, or cauliflower? I mean, I guess I like broccoli and cauliflower. The rest are kind of gross though. Wrong! All 6 of these vegetables are actually the same thing! That means you like them all! That's not how that works. I'll be good. Anyway, these veggies are all just cultivars of the same species, Brassica oleracea, otherwise known as wild cabbage. Every part of the plant is edible to some extent, but there's not much of it to go around. So a bunch of different people throughout history said, alright, what if we just take one specific part of the plant and go fucking insane with it? And that's what they did. Those who bred for giant leaves got kale, going for huge dense flower buds gets you broccoli, juicy engorged lateral leaf buds equal Brussels sprouts, etc. Speaking of segues, let's check out eggplants. The OG eggplant was first domesticated in India where it can still be found in the wild today. It looks nothing like an eggplant though, they actually resemble little green berries the size of grapes. The only thing it seems to have in common with the classic purple eggplant is how little both of them have in common with an egg. However, if we add the RGB percentage values of their color and merge their shapes, we do get what looks approximately like an egg, so I guess that solves that mystery. This whole transformation really is a testament to man's greatness though. That's like starting out with a frog and selectively breeding them until you end up with Grimace from McDonald's lore. Speaking of which, did you know Grimace used used to be evil and have 4 arms? This is a real thing. I'd like to think that when they lopped off his extra limbs, all his evil energy went with him, and now there's just 2 plump purple cylinders scampering around the countryside waiting to pull unsuspecting kids under ball pits, never to be seen again. That's just my McDonald's headcanon though. Anyway, back to whatever we were talking about. Next is corn, or sorry, maize. I call it corn like a normal person. If it was supposed to be called maize, these would be called mazes. Obviously, that's like the perfect opportunity, but they're not, so put an etymological sock in it. Or stocking. Anyway, I was totally expecting old corn to look like those baby corns you find in Chinese food and literally nowhere else. Turns out those actually are just baby corns. One suspected ancestor of corn is known as teosinti, which looks like this. Gee whiz, Sam, that sure does look like garbage. Good eye, Billy. That's because it was garbage. Whereas modern corn has a kernel count in the hundreds, teosinti only has 5 to 12, with each one being encased in a hard shell that's basically impossible to get into short of boiling it or chipping a tooth. The fact that people decided to domesticate it in the first place makes sense once you realize that most grains are basically the same thing. But honestly, that just makes me wish people figured out how to turn a piece of wheat into a big chunk of whatever to gnaw on. This whole thing disappointed me so much that I actually moved it to the top of my list of reasons not to visit the Mayans if I ever get a time machine. Nonetheless, as you can see, human endeavor can accomplish amazing things. And just as a few thousand years of selective breeding can turn this into this, a few hours of learning a week can turn you into, you know, a more talented and interesting version of you. And what better way to do that than with Skillshare.com? Skillshare is an online learning community with over 22,000 classes in technology, design, business, and more. Premium membership gives you unlimited access to high-quality classes on must-know topics so you can improve your skills, unlock new opportunities, and do the work you love. They've got great courses in just about any creative pursuit you can think of. I used to be totally musically illiterate till I took this course. Then I made this. What about food? You like food? Of course you do. You'd be dead if you didn't. With Skillshare, you can make your own macaroons, fresh pasta, spring rolls, whatever. Join the millions of students already learning on Skillshare today with a special offer just for my viewers, where you can get 2 months of Skillshare for free. To sign up, go to skl.sh/samo2. Again, for those in the back, go to skl.sh/samo2 to get 2 months of unlimited access to over 22,000 classes for free. Act now for this special offer and start learning today. Anyway, till next time, I'm Salmonella, and thank you for watching. Mentorship. What the f-
Hey kids, today I'll be discussing the alcoholic equivalents of the various allotropes of carbon. For those of you that don't know, an allotrope is just the various forms that carbon atoms can arrange themselves into. But anyway, let's get started. So amorphous carbon is like beer. It's the first form to ever be produced by humans, likely by accident. It's also the weakest form. It has a bunch of varieties, most of which taste terrible. And you need a whole lot of it if you want to have a good cookout. Graphite is like wine. It's almost as old as amorphous carbon, having been used by humans since ancient times. However, it's significantly stronger. Up until recently, only the rich could really get much enjoyment out of it. But today, most individuals can use it if they choose, but not all varieties are equal. Diamond is like vodka. First of all, it's very strong, the strongest form that's likely to be found in the average household. It's typically valued based on its purity and clarity, though flavored varieties do exist. Though it can be manufactured right here at home, most people seem to prefer it when it's from far-off lands. And remember never to use too much of it or else you might regret it later. Graphene is like brandy. It's similar to graphite in structure, but it's put through a process to make it more pure, and as a result, it's much stronger. Fullerenes are like absinthe. It's not as mainstream as the other varieties, mostly only being used by the intellectual types. It's also claimed to have a bunch of properties not shared by any other form out there. But despite all its hype, it has little real-world application currently. Finally, carbine is like pure alcohol. Despite its simplicity, it's extremely difficult to produce with current methods, except in very small amounts. If you were to have a bunch of it, however, it would be more than twice as strong as diamonds. Hopefully, this forced analogy has been at least vaguely informational. But anyway, that's all for today. I'm Salmonella, and thank you for watching.
This video is sponsored by Skillshare.
Hey kids, as we all know, the evolution of species is an incredible process, driven by little more than the random chance that certain mutations may happen to provide a practical advantage in a creature's environment. And as a result, there's a lot of things out there that look super dumb once you strip back a few layers. Here's the top 10 worst animal skeletons of all time. So first and foremost, I'd like to settle a little debate I've been seeing floating around the past few weeks. Yes, penguins do, in fact, have knees, but in order to hide full-grown legs into one plump cylinder, you gotta have a little skeletal trickery on your side. You guys ever do wall sits in gym class or elsewhere? One of the most torturous exercises out there. I now feel even worse for penguins, because not only did they have to deal with living in a frigid black and white hellscape, the most hostile environment known to man second only to the vacuum of space, all the while constantly pursued by ravenous bloodthirsty sea dogs, but they're also secretly doing wall sits their entire life. Quick side note, in Mandarin, the word for penguin consists of the characters for business goose, which is fucking hilarious, like one day a goose put on a suit and said, "Today it is time to make a name for myself, honk." This next guy is known as Parsons chameleon, found in the more remote regions of Madagascar. Notice the fleshy protuberances around its nose area. Turns out, not fleshy, not even remotely fleshy, not even one flesh. Instead, it just has a skull forever frozen in time in the middle of exploding, like it sneezed right in the middle of God shaping it out of clay, and he was just like, ah, whatever, it's a feature now. So for that, this rough-headed reptilian gets number 9. Normally I would have ranked it higher, but that's a dope tale, so he gets some pity points. Next is the pufferfish. So for most of my life, I've pictured pufferfish as just not having any bones. I know it doesn't really make sense, but neither does them turning into a balloon like a goddamn cartoon. Turns out, in their normal state, they actually look like this, and when they inflate, those concentric rings of spines slide outwards past one another to cover the full area, like the aperture of a camera lens expanding to cover the full frame of the fish. The sheer ingenuity of this design has shattered my childhood dream of real-life balloon animals, which has earned the pufferfish the number 8 spot on this list. Now, if you've gotten around to certain zoological circles, you've been shown this skull and been told, ah yes, that comes from the dwarf elephant. Oh, you've never seen one? That's because, they're extinct. And that thing in the middle? Ah yes, nothing more than the nose hole to which the trunk connects. However, if you're a rational, free-thinking adult like me, you can look past the lies spoon-fed to you by Nat Geo and other liberal media outlets and see this for what it is. A cyclops. Next is the orca, otherwise known as the killer whale, the panda torpedo, or the SeaWorld slave. Its skeleton is fairly normal at first glance, but check out this little thing under here. That little bony blip is actually all that remains of the legs and pelvis of the orca from when it evolved from land mammals. Personally, I think that's highly disrespectful to their ancestors. Like, they could have taken the seal route and used those legs for good in the water, but instead these sea cowards said, no thanks, we're gonna undo all that evolution and just be bigger, smarter, warmer fish again. But hey, we'll keep this little piece of nothing just to remember you guys by. Truthfully, I could have chosen almost any cetacean to pick on for this, but the orca's face also reminds me of SCP-682, which is the most OP overrated shit out there, so he gets the number 6 spot. Moving on, now bear with me here. In every other mammal on Earth, the canine teeth point downward from the gum to the mouth. You know, like a tooth. But this guy, known as the Babirusa, said, huh, and decided to have them grow up through the entirety of its fucking snoot and out the other end, which is the most nonsensical thing I've ever seen. Like, toenails out the front? How cliche. Let's make them go through the whole foot instead. Look, now I can kick good behind me. That's not all though. These tusks also keep growing for the creature's entire life, which isn't a problem in and of itself, right? Rodents, they keep chewing stuff to wear them down. Alligators, they just let them fall out now and then. But the Babirusa's like, I'll just nut in a lady pig long before this becomes an issue. So if it lives long enough, the teeth can curve right on around and slowly bore into the thing's face, like built-in Chinese bamboo torture. And occasionally, they can end up actually piercing the skull and shish kebabbing the brain. Now some people might say that this doesn't belong on this list, given that teeth aren't technically bones. And to those people, kids, we say, eat shit and die. Next we have the octopus. The octopus skeleton is so bad that it doesn't even exist. Sure, they got this little thing in the middle, but that doesn't count, that's just chitin. And yeah, they can get in a jar or whatever, but at what cost? At the animal picnics, the crowd shouts, bleh, shun the spineless freak. And at the animal wheelbarrow races, with nothing to grab hold of, the cephalopod holds a solitary vigil at the starting line. And lo, the octopus wins naught but a participant medal at the Grand Prix, and the number 4 spot on this list. Moving on, here's the skeleton of a fruit bat. Now, not a big deal to us regular folk, but imagine if humans had no context of bats and they dug this thing up. Like, class, archaeologists have recently found these fossilized remains, and using modern technology, we can see exactly what it would have looked like back when it was alive. This abominable creature is known only to scientists as Finger Boy, and is theorized to have fed upon fruit, insects, and the dreams of orphans, which it would siphon out from the ears of the errant little waifs whilst they slumbered. By the way, if you Google image bat skeleton, like, more than half of them have the ears built in, just like,
like, I feel the extraordinarily bat-like wings and figure of our decoration are much too subtle for our consumers. Better slap these on. At number 2, we have the anteater. From its oboe-like skull to its gorilla fist and hands, one can only wonder who let this creature exist. Fun fact, if you take the anteater's skull and blow into its nose, it plays a beautiful song recounting the animal's entire life, and then security escorts you out of the museum. Looking at this, I can only pose the question asked for generations long before my own. That being, why the long face? Before we get to the number 1 spot, here's a few honorable mentions. The wolf eel. The ostrich. This human-cat hybrid I found on a tabloid site. And of course, the mermaid. So at our number 1 spot, we have this creature. That's supposed to be a mirror. I know most of you can't see yourself in it on account of your filthy Dorito-smeared screen, so just take my word for it. So what's wrong with humans, you ask? Well, a lot of things, but for now, let's stick to the skeleton. First off, these bones right here, these are known as the metatarsals. All part of the foot, right? No, that's a bunch of primate propaganda. In most other groups of land mammals, what we'd consider our ankles is actually the quote-unquote knee of the animal. Thanks a lot, walking upright. Also, it's estimated that around 80% of people will experience chronic back pain at some point in their life. Thanks a lot, walking upright. Lastly, probably something you've heard about at some point, our skull to pelvis ratio. For most animals, giving birth, not a big deal. Small heads, wide hips, mazel tov. But check out the big brain on Brett. Throws a real monkey wrench in the works there. For a while it led to some problems till those extra brains figured out how to work around it, so I guess you win this round, humans. But that doesn't stop you from also winning the number 1 spot on the worst skeletons of all time. But hey, just cause you'll forever be flawed on the inside, doesn't mean you can't improve yourself on the outside. That's why you need to try Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with over 25,000 classes in design, business, technology, and more. Premium membership gives you unlimited access to high-quality classes on must-know topics, so you can improve your skills, unlock new opportunities, and do the work you love. For all my life, I thought I knew how to make a grilled cheese. Then I saw this class, and I realized I didn't. Now I do again, but those few minutes between seeing the thumbnail and finishing the course were a dark time in my life. But let's say you don't like grilled cheese. Well, you must be either vegan or dead, and either way, you probably smell terrible. What better way to soak up that earthy must in your home than with a hand-selected houseplant known to improve air quality? You can even put googly eyes on it. Aw, it's like I have a friend. Join the more than 7 million people already learning on Skillshare today with a special offer just for my viewers. Everyone who visits the link in the description can get 2 months of unlimited access to the 25,000 plus classes on Skillshare for absolutely free. So please, put down that bone broth and start sipping some brain juice today. Anyway, that's all for today. Till next time, I'm Salmonella, and I'm still scared of swine flu.
This video is sponsored by Skillshare. Hey kids, you're probably familiar with at least a few characters whose obsessive penny pinching truly knows no bounds. Yes, from Ebenezer Scrooge to Scrooge McDuck, nobody hoards money quite like misers. But these guys aren't the most miserly misers out there, not by a long shot. First of all, look at their top hats, their extravagant use of glasses, their luxurious chairs. These things are worth their weight in precious shekels. No true miser would waste their wealth on such frills. Second of all, these guys aren't real. They're fictional characters. Scrooge McDuck does not exist. I don't care what CNN says, it's all liberal conspiracy bullshit. I mean, look at this article by the Huffington Post. You mean to tell me that this picture isn't photoshopped? Ridiculous. But you know who was real? One Daniel Dancer of London, England. Born in 1716, Daniel's father died at a young age, leaving behind a large agricultural estate for Daniel to oversee. When it was first inherited, the property brought in a few £100s a year, which doesn't sound like much today, but given that a general laborer could be expected to make around £19 per year in 1710, it's safe to say that Dancer could afford to live a fairly lavish lifestyle off his passive income alone. But Dan was like, you know, all this food and clothing and stuff is alright, but you know what I really like? Owning money. Say, how much does a pound cost? Well, that's a complicated question, Daniel. Can currency really be said to have intrinsic value? Some economists believe that— TLDR please, they cost a pound. Jesus, that's a lot. I better start saving. Thus began one of the most intentionally frugal lifestyles history has ever seen. Let me walk you through a few of Dancer's day-to-day habits. First of all, soap, don't even think about it. The closest thing to bathing that Daniel did was during the summer months when, once or twice a week, he'd wade into the nearby pond and scrub his face with a handful of sand. Say what you will, but what he lacked in deodorization, he certainly made up for in exfoliation. Admittedly, all of London probably reeked to high hell back then, so while Daniel's smell might not have tipped people off to his eccentricity, his clothes almost certainly did. On a good day, he'd be seen in one of his coats, which were homemade patchwork abominations of various garments that Dancer found on the streets and local dust heaps, looking like a walking dementia patient sewing circle. Similarly, all his shoes were either scavenged or Frankensteined out of other pairs of shoes he already owned, with the whole ensemble being barely held together with haphazardly tied bands made of the hay grown on his estate. In fact, a lot of the time, he'd ditch normal clothes altogether and just wear the hay.
To his credit, in his youth, Daniel was known to purchase a whole 2 shirts per year as his clothing expense. But one day he looked in the mirror and said, "Daniel, you're bleeding funds like a stuck pig. It's time to grow up and get your act together," and cut his budget to only 1 shirt per year. One of the few people that Daniel associated with regularly was his sister, whom he lived with. Believe it or not, she shared in a lot of Daniel's tight-fisted habits, and it definitely showed. She was described as, quote, having more the appearance of a walking dunghill than one of the fair sex. Couldn't have said it better myself, honestly. Dancer prepared all of his food for the upcoming week ahead of time, consisting of only 14 hard dumplings and 3 pounds of beef stretched out over the entire 7-day period. Every day, he'd eat only a single meal that was basically equivalent to 2 wads of dried out dough and 1.5 quarter-pounder patties from McDonald's. He kept this habit up for years without fail, except for one time when he stumbled upon a fully intact, rotting sheep carcass during his daily stroll. He was like, "Good lord, this is just obscene. Who would leave a perfectly good pile of arguably edible meat and organs just sitting around like this?" So he dragged the thing home and made him and his sister a nice big pile of spoiled mutton pies, which they subsisted off of for several weeks. That's a real life hack right there. Who needs refrigeration if it's already rancid, am I right? Despite Daniel's rabid fear of any unnecessary spending, he did own a dog named Bob that he was quite fond of. At this point, I'm almost certain that Dancer just decided to base his entire life off of linoleum by no effects, which is pretty incredible considering linoleum wasn't even invented for another 100 years. Anyway though, one day, Daniel's neighbor came to complain about how Bob had been harassing his sheep. So Daniel said, "Don't worry boy, I ain't gonna kill you, but we don't want a lawsuit on our hands, do we?" "No we don't. What would we do if a lawyer came around here, huh?" "That's right, and make his children watch, yeah." So he decided to take the dog to the local farrier, which is basically a blacksmith that specializes in horseshoes and the like. "Hey, could you make my dog, like, not have teeth anymore?" What kind of business you think I'm running here, boy?" "Come on, man, you file down horses' hooves for a living. Teeth are just tiny mouth hooves. That's close." "Sorry, buddy, but close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades." Well, got me there. Say, what's a hand grenade? None of my sources say what happened to the dog after his untimely nubbening, but I do know Dan never got sued, so I guess the operation was a success. Daniel's sister passed away in 1766, leaving him so distraught that he actually went out of his way to buy mourning clothes for her funeral. And by that I mean he bought a pair of secondhand black stockings, and that's it. Still, that's a big deal when it comes to the likes of Dancer. At this point, the only person close to a friend that Dancer had was a woman known as Lady Tempest. She was so influential over him that she was actually able to convince him to buy, get this, a 1-shilling hat. This was quite an accomplishment, as Daniel's last hat was older than half of you at 14 years old. "What? I'm not! You don't...
Meow.
You..." Of course, the next time Lady Tempest went to hang out with him, he was still wearing his old disgusting hat. When questioned about the one he bought, he goes, "Oh yeah, that frilly old thing. Sold it for a 6 pence profit. Super easy too. I tell you, forget house flipping. Hat flipping's gonna be the cool new thing pretty soon." Lo and behold, 250 years later, he was wrong. Daniel died at the ripe old age of 78, which seems pretty shocking considering the whole not using soap, eating rotten food thing, but I guess his near total isolation from other people made up for that when it came to preventing illness. Though he never ended up shelling out any of the massive hoard of wealth that he accumulated over this time, his efforts weren't completely in vain. By the time he passed away, Daniel's estate was now pulling in about £3,000 in yearly net revenue, 10 times the amount it earned when he first inherited it. So, moral of the story, parsimony has its place. While it's good to save money, don't torture yourself just for the sake of a few bucks. Next time your parent or significant other insists on turning down the thermostat or keeping the windows up to save gas, just say, "Hey, are we human? Or are we Dancer?" But you know what else is more valuable than money?
Knowledge!
That's why you need to try Skillshare.com. Skillshare is an online learning community with over 23,000 classes in technology, design, business, and more. Premium membership gives you unlimited access to high-quality classes on must-know topics so you can improve your skills, unlock new opportunities, and do the work you love. Want to learn how to budget your life without turning into a filthy carcass-eating loner? Try the Core 4 of personal finance. You'll learn all the money management skills that really should be taught in school but aren't in no time. If you're looking for something a little more ambitious, it's never too early or too late to try your hand at entrepreneurship. With some of these classes, you can turn that one genius business idea that you and your friends had that one night into reality. Join the millions of students already learning on Skillshare today with a special offer just for my viewers, where you can get 2 months of Skillshare for just 99 cents. To sign up, go to skl.sh/sam04. Again, you with the eyebrows, go to skl.sh/sam04 to get 2 months of unlimited access to over 23,000 classes for less than $1, technically. Act now for this special offer and start learning today. Till next time, I'm Sam Manella, and thank you for watching.
kids, today I'm going to talk about a few slang words that I never understood. First is chicken legs. Now, if you know me, you know that I'm leaner than lean, so I've received this insult a couple times, hey, chicken legs. But chicken legs really aren't that skinny. Here's a diagram of my leg, right? And here's the average chicken leg. Look at that. I wish I had that kind of calf definition. That's sexy as fuck. There are bodybuilders with less meat on their bones than that. And considering the fact that most people have interacted with the drumstick at some point in their lives, I'm frankly dumbfounded that anyone ever thought to use this to refer to skinny people. Then there's socking someone. Hey man, I'm trying to think of a new slang word for punching someone in the face really hard. Like just destroying someone with your fists. Got any ideas? How about one of the softest, gentlest, and most unassuming objects found in one's entire house? That's like kicking someone in the dick and being like, whoa bro, you just got feathered. Fuck you, don't try to downplay my suffering. If anything, I got shin bashed in the dick bag. That's the proper level of vulgarity relative to the situation. Anyway, it would make a little more sense if you said gloved, because at least those are socks for your hands. But no, it's nonsense. Next is blow, in reference to cocaine. It's a form of air movement, so I guess this one is like half correct, but it could still lead to a lot of confusion. Yo, y'all wanna do some blow? Oh gee whiz, walla, okie dokie. Oh, I'm feeling it. It's kicking in. Oh, doggy. That's some nifty blow you got there, eh? Get out of my house. Next is nuts. When somebody is nuts, it means they're wild, they're crazy, they live life on the edge, right? What the fuck is so exciting about this? Finally, box. So box is a common slang word for one's lady bits, right? Now I've only been around 2 vaginas in my life. I came out of one of them when I was born, and I spent most of my time around the other one with my eyes closed, so my knowledge on that subject might be a little shaky. However, I have been around hundreds of thousands of boxes in my life. I know those inside and out, so that should make up for it. And let me tell you, these two things could not be less similar in shape. You see, boxes have corners. If your pussy has corners, you should probably start taking the tampons out of the container before you put them in. Likewise, if you compare the properties of either object, you'll notice that they're basically opposites in every way, so as a slang word, it's totally unfitting. Anyway, that's all for today. Till next time, I'm Salmonella, and thank you for watching. Hey kids, it's Wildlife Wednesday. So today I decided to make some animal planets. No, not that Animal Planet. What I mean is, if you took every member of a certain group of animals and just rolled them into a single ball in space, how big would that sphere be? And I got some interesting answers, but before I show you my findings, I'll quickly go over my process. So first, I found the full population of a given creature or set of creatures. Then I would take the average weight of that creature, and multiply the two together to get the total mass of that creature on Earth. To go from mass to volume, however, you still need the density of whatever you're measuring. Fortunately, the density of all animals is quite similar, partly due to the fact that the vast majority of creatures are at least 70% water by weight. Couple that with the fact that the ratio of fat, muscle, and bone or exoskeleton in all creatures is at least vaguely similar, and we can estimate the density of all animals to be around the same. Water is exactly 1 kilogram per liter, and then I'm throwing in a plus or minus 0.1 as a rounding error for the other material involved. As such, the values at play here are going to have 2 significant figures at most. I've included a link in the description to a spreadsheet with all my data and calculations. Quick disclaimer before we get started, a lot of this is based on estimation, particularly in the case of animal population. It's actually quite difficult to get a definitive count of a given animal on Earth, so all of the following is simply based on science's best guesses. Also, this is by no means a comprehensive list, it's just those that I could find the most reliable data on. One more clarification, the amount of specificity I give is the amount I apply to a given sphere, right? So whereas a blue whale sphere is just that one species, an ant sphere would cover all types of ants. That being said, let's roll. First up is the blue whale sphere. Although they are freaking gigantic, there is only like 10,000 of them on Earth. So the sphere only came out to around 140 meters in diameter. That's about the same height as the Great Pyramid. A bit larger than that is the elephant sphere, which came out to around 170 meters. Next up is the domesticated cat sphere at around 180. That's only slightly smaller than the Roman Colosseum, which was 190 in diameter. Next up is the camel sphere at around 260 meters. Slightly larger was the domesticated dog sphere at 280, then the chicken sphere at 330. The horse sphere is at 370 meters in diameter. Larger than that was the ant sphere, which came down to around 420 meters. I almost didn't include this one as it is very difficult to find a definitive answer on ant populations. All the sources I found differed by like an order of magnitude or two, so I just averaged them out. Anyway though, imagine like falling back first into this thing and just having all the little minuscule creatures just consume you into their mass. Feeling itchy yet? You should. Anyway, this ball was just shy of the Empire State Building, which stood at 440. Next up is the sheep sphere, which got up to 650. Close to that is the Vatican City, which is 663 meters across. That means the Vatican is just big enough to hold all the sheep in the world. If that's not a metaphor, I don't know what is. Near the top of our list is the Antarctic Krill planet, which reached about 950 meters. The People planet was just a smidge larger at 960. Interestingly enough, despite the fact that there are 7.4 billion people in the sphere, it would only take 585 of them stacked toe-to-head to reach the height of the sphere. Anyway though, you'd think the human planet would be the largest since for our size we're so disproportionately represented on Earth. However, our largest planet is actually due as a result of our giant population, as well as our voracious appetite. The cow planet, you see, is at a diameter of about 1.2 kilometers. That's around 2/3 of the length of the Brooklyn Bridge. So all this time, you humans thought you ruled the Earth, when in fact, we are merely the servants to our cow overlords. I'm Salmonella, and thank you for watching. Hey kids, I've been told by a lot of people that there's nothing more exciting than the metric system. They may have a point, but I can still prove them wrong. Today, we're going to talk about some specific lesser-known units of measurement. First is the Schmidt Pain Index. Now, anybody could tell you that getting stung by a bug tends to hurt, but just how much does one sting hurt compared to another? Are yellow jackets worse than hornets? Are fire ants worse than honeybees? Nobody in the world of science knew for sure. That is, until a young upstart by the name of Justin Schmidt decided to boldly go where no entomologist has gone before. But how did he plan to quantify the level of pain caused by different insect stings? Well, it went something like this. Alright, honeybee. Zzz, ow, god, that hurt. I'll give that like a 2. Next, paper wasp. Zzz, ah! Okay, that's like a 3. Next, let's try bullet ant. Jesus Christ, Mary Mother of Satan's left nipple, it's like my hand is made entirely out of urethras, and each and every one is having a red-hot catheter put in and ripped out 5 times every second. My very being is on fire. My only desire left is for death himself to bless me with sweet relief. I'll give that a 4. No. 4+. In all seriousness though, I'm pretty sure the index is meant to be logarithmic, like earthquake magnitudes. So just like a magnitude 7 earthquake is 10 times as powerful as a magnitude 6, a bullet ant sting causes 100 times as much pain as a honeybee. In total, Schmidt cataloged 78 different species of the order Hymenoptera, which includes ants, bees, and wasps. You can tell a man is really dedicated to his job when, after getting stung by 77 insects, he says to himself, you know what? That wasn't enough. I need one more creature to inject its venom into me, and only then will this list be complete. I guess you could say, he just really gave a Schmidt. Next is the Waffle House Index. So for those of you that didn't know, the Waffle House is one of the most resilient establishments in the world. Whereas most restaurants would simply close down in the event of, say, a hurricane, Waffle House just goes from their normal mode to disaster response mode, following extensive protocol that allows that location to keep serving customers in spite of low food supply or even a power outage. In response to this business practice, FEMA came up with what is known as the Waffle House Index, which is a system to easily assess how badly an area is damaged by a natural catastrophe. If the Waffle House is fully open, they're in the green, which means things are basically fine. If the Waffle House is using their low supply menu, you're in the yellow, which means that the area is almost certainly mid-disaster. Finally, if you're in the red, that means the Waffle House is either closed or gone. Now that's a sign of some real nuclear zombie holocaust type shit going down, so if you're not already dead, you should probably vacate the area. Most engineers could tell you that, structurally speaking, the triangle is the strongest of all shapes. But I believe that there's one shape that's even stronger. Godspeed, Waffle House. Next we have the APGAR score. So the APGAR score is a rating system used by hospitals to determine how healthy a newborn baby is on a scale from 0 to 10. It's called APGAR based on its 5 criteria, which include appearance, pulse, grimace, activity, and respiration. And each of these is rated on a scale from 0 to 2 to get your final score. Personally, I think this set of standards is a little